Hello, it's J.S.V or Joey, whatever you want to call me. Today is a first story time that has nothing to do with my typical mental illness or paranormal stories. This has to do with the wonderful, not so wonderful, issue of bullying. And one of the worst moments of my life that really changed me forever with the way I saw people and the way I behaved afterward. I'm not going to be getting petty at all, but I will be spilling quite a bit of tea, and it's exceptionally good today. I enjoy my chamomile, and I love my fiance's kitty mug. Simon is not yet my fiance, but we're like soon to be, but I still call him that. Okay, so I went to a middle school. That's what they call it in the South when it's junior high. So I don't want to say the name of the school but I will describe it because I am going to use my teacher's name. She deserves it, and whatever. So I went to a school, blank or Direction Pine Middle School, and it's in, I believe, the Lauderhill or Sunrise area of Florida. It was rough. Middle school is one of the worst ages ever. I believe you're probably 10 through 13, latest 14, and it was really difficult. This school was wild, in my opinion. There was fighting every day. There was whenever there was the day before a long vacation, there was something called Cracker Day, where all the quote unquote people that were like badass or thought they were thugged out or whatever. I'm not going to say people of color because that's bull. Because the crackers were twice as bad or worse as any person of color I ever dealt with in my life. In fact, my only sort of friends at this school were Hispanic, Middle Eastern, and Black. So let's start with when I first went to middle school. I had already started having a horrible time in elementary school, being made fun of and learning brand new vocabulary words that was never taught to me in Staten Island. And I was surrounded by artistic kids, theatrical kids, singers, actors, dancers, and I never heard the word faggot in my life until I was in elementary school in Florida. That shouldn't happen. Anyway, I had 3 friends, and I wanted to change their names, but I kept messing up every time I tried to do this, so I already spoke to one, and she's okay, and I'm not going to say their last names. So I had 3 friends, Stephanie, Maggie, and Heather. And they were not totally, like, close friends to me. I think they were nice to me because they felt bad for me because everyone made fun of me. Everyone hated me. Don't know why. So the administration knew that I was having a really rough time, and I came from quite a troubled home at this time of my life. So they had this joint class with 2 teachers. One I'm not going to name, but one was Miss Fitzgerald. And it was quite a big class. It was like maybe 30, 35 kids. Maybe. I'm maybe wrong on that. I'm going to say it was just a lot of kids. And it seemed like not everyone, but a few came from homes like mine, or none of us were slow at all. So it wasn't like a slow learning class. It just seemed that everyone seemed to have a little baggage or something. So we were told, to my mom, by the counselor that this was supposed to be a encouraging environment and a safe place for kids like me. Don't know what she meant, but that's what was told to me. And so it started off terrible already, but the only people who would talk to me were Stephanie, Heather, and Maggie, and no boys spoke to me at all. One day, I noticed that our teacher was really conservative. Okay, trigger warning. If you are hardcore Republican, conservative, really right-leaning, it's been wonderful meeting you. Have a nice day. I am not the person for you, and neither will be this video. So she just kept saying like weird, like Fox Newsy type of things. And she would always talk about how she loved her life in Plantation Acres, which is a really, really rich, almost dominantly white neighborhood in Florida near one of the major malls in the state. Had a lot of crazy times in Plantation Acres. So I just already knew I could not relate to her. I could not resonate with her in any way. She was just very snobbish, and it was very evident. And she was very anti anything me. I would read all the time in this class. I would always read books. I never had friends. I just had books. And I never noticed this about me until later in life, but I always read British author books. I never realized that, but I did. And I once wrote in a long essay, because I always wrote something like, oh, it was wreaking havoc and mayhem. And she stopped the class and brought me up to her desk, and she was like, what is this? Havoc and mayhem. I was like, what? I'm looking at a teacher, I think she was an English teacher at one point, tell me she doesn't know what havoc and mayhem is. I was like, that means it's a ruckus or chaos. It's something like someone starting stuff. And she told me to change it. And I was like, okay, whatever. That was so weird to me. And again, it was coming from a teacher who should know what havoc and mayhem are. Like, come on. So, one day in particular, people were obviously making fun of me about being gay or whatever. And apparently I had sneezed or something and I went like this. And everyone in the class was laughing like it looked like I was doing a sexual movement. And I remember this really like, I don't know, she seemed really thug life to me. This blonde girl named Aubrey, she seemed really tough and hard. I did not want to mess with her. But every time she sat next to me, she kept asking me to do that just so her and the sports kids in the class could laugh at me. And I just didn't understand why she was being like that. But again, none of them were really my friends. So one day, Miss Fitzgerald starts telling this random story about how she was trying to explain to her daughter how homosexual men have sexual relations. And she told it in such a way that was making it seem to me that she was disgusted. And that she said that when she mentioned it to her daughter kept covering up her butt and running around the house going, ew, ew, ow, 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 that's terrible. And Miss Fitzgerald had said her and her son were laughing and it was gross. Red flag. And I remember her other teacher was definitely looking at her like, what are you doing? And these teachers had apparently been very close at one time, but something happened after this next incident, which was awful. And I know that I'm smiling and I'm kind of hyper right now, but this was not funny in any way, shape, or form. So we had like group desks, like 4 desks bunched together once. I don't know why, but we did. And I remember seeing Stephanie, Heather, and Maggie kind of looking towards me, and like they weren't really sat towards the board. They were we were able to look at each other during class. And I remember I was sitting next to this beautiful black girl who was always nice to me, but she never went out of her way to stop when people would blatantly at the same table laugh or say jokes to me. She would never say anything to stop them. Again, kids are kids. I hate using that excuse, but I'm just going to say, reaching out to Stephanie recently, she was like, first off, I don't remember this and I'm sorry, but I am sorry if I ever hurt you any way, shape, or form. That is gross to me and things like that. And she's been very supportive of my channel, and this is something that blows my mind. Like, it's amazing to go back to people you thought like hated you or thought you in a certain way, and now being older, it's a very different story. And I've had tons, I'm going to say this before I say this horrible story. I've had, in my 20s, when I would go back home to Florida, I would be in a random restaurant or something. I would have kids from that horrible school and the awful high schools I went to, Piper and Plantation, and they would come up to me and say, Joey, I wanted to say that I'm really sorry for everything I did to you. I cannot believe the way I made fun of you like that, and I'm really sorry. I actually had several guys come up and tell me that, including from a Dolphin Elementary named school and Sawgrass Elementary, which is going to be another story time. So this particular day was the day that she told that story. And everyone just kept doing this bickering and looking at me. Because when she had said how homosexuals had sexual relations, I had no idea about that life. I was very late in the game of sexuality. I didn't mess with myself or touch myself until I was like 14. That's insane to when I tell other people that, but it's true. I was just really late to the game. So they were just talking about, and I wasn't fascinated. I was just like, oh, I never knew that. And something, or someone said was like bull, or yeah, Joey likes that. It was just really unusual. And I remember I got real quiet. And then suddenly, I don't know how this happened. And unfortunately, Stephanie doesn't remember. So I don't know how to get the info. But a lot of people started crowding around my desk. And I had like 25 kids, including my 3 friends, laughing at me, laughing at me. However, I remember distinctly Stephanie, Heather, and Maggie were looking at each other the whole time like, this isn't cool. I think they were just doing it to kind of blend in and not make waves. But the way they were looking at me, they were like, Joey, just take this easy. Like, don't worry about it. Just relax. I remember Heather doing that, like, or something like, oh, poor Joey, something like that. So suddenly this like one of the handsome black jocks, Atiba, and like, I wanted to say Darrell, but I don't know, they like walked over and were calling me a faggot. And I said, but I didn't know that people did that. And I messed up in my phrasing, and I had said, I didn't know I was gay, but I meant like, I didn't know about gays or anything like that, but I had already messed up, and they attacked it. Like, everyone blushed out, and Miss Fitzgerald looked me in my face and laughed at me. I'm gonna calm down for a second. She laughed at me, and I remember my other teacher looked at her like she did not, like Mariah Carey, I don't know her. It was like that. It was like a wave of reality had hit this other teacher. So this is not in the South, like in Florida schools, you have to have, this never happened in New York, I never experienced it. You have to have a hall pass to leave. And as Miss Fitzgerald's laughing at me, she wrote out a pass and gave it to me. And I mean, like, threw it at me. I caught it, I grabbed all my stuff, and tears falling down in sobs, I just walked out of the room, and I could hear them laughing. Just laughing their butts off. And I remember I was really hurt. I went to this English teacher's class that I liked, and I just sat there, and even her students made fun of me, and they were in the younger class. So I just sat there, and I went to lunch. And I don't remember if Stephanie, Heather, and Maggie were there with me, but there was this girl, Geraldine, who was a big gossiper. Gossiper to the max. Stephanie, you may remember who I'm talking about. And there was this very good-looking guy named Jermaine, or German, something like that. And he was Spanish, and he was really popular. And he kept carrying an umbrella, like a long umbrella. And I was talking to one of the only guy friends I ever talked to. His name was Sean. And I was just talking, and I had told them what happened. And they were both like, I mean, Sean and this girl Priscilla were like, ooh, that sounds bad. And I was like, yeah, it was really bad. But this guy was laughing because he had heard from the sports guys, the jockey guys, what had happened. So he was like, I heard Joey doesn't know how gay people have sex or whatever. And he took his umbrella and shoved it up my butt. Like, obviously, like, I'm wearing pants, but, like, on the bench of the seat. And my entire, obviously, everyone at the people that I was talking to were like, whoa. But they were laughing. And I grabbed his umbrella and I threw it. And this was one of the only times that I got so angry. And I said, so I didn't even curse. I just said, go to hell. And I got up and I walked out of lunch. I'm definitely not allowed to do that. But I think there was always like an announcer or security guard with like a freaking microphone just walking around looking at everyone being jerks. And this school had awful people. I don't know what it was, but people were not kind at all. And I just went to the media center, which is the library. And I just sat there. And as I rode the bus home, I learned new words that day. I learned Tom girl. Never heard of that. But apparently it's the opposite of tomboy for a girl who is a little boyish. Then they kept calling me, besides the word faggot, they would call me like Sissy or Josephine, because my full name is Joseph, but they'd call me Josephine. And I remembered on the way back, on the bus back that day home, I just remembered I can never talk to people again. And I remembered from that day on, if anyone ever asked me about my life, myself, I lied through my teeth. Lied, made up fabrications, anything I could to make sure none of these people knew anything about me that was real because they didn't deserve it. And I remembered that I had never spoken to Heather, Maggie, or Stephanie about what was really happening, because I told Stephanie recently, I believe it would have been different if I was way more honest with you guys instead of just keeping stuff from you. Because I remember Maggie was one of the only people who, when I used to cry about things, she would be like, you need to stop letting this get to you. You need to stop it, because they're not going to stop. They're going to get worse. And one day I remember she looked at me and she was like, you know, Joey, I just want to tell you, you're beautiful. You have the prettiest eyes in the entire school. And she's like, you're very cute. You're not in the best shape as everybody else, but neither was Maggie. And I remember her telling me, you know, but no one has eyes like yours, and no one has the personality of Joey. And I just remembered that Heather and Stephanie were way more sensitive to me after that, because I believed that they were like, what happened was not okay. And everyone else in the class, I don't know what Miss Fitzgerald got, if she got reprimanded, what happened, but she did call my mom, and my mom, I didn't tell my parents. So when she heard from Miss Fitzgerald, and then I ended up telling my mom the story that she was telling before this whole thing happened, she was like, who the hell do you think you are? My mom really went off on her, and Miss Fitzgerald did not like my mom. And I was not going to tell my dad. My dad is full on Guido from Sicily straight to Brooklyn. You don't play with my dad. So I would never tell my dad anything that happened, because I knew my dad would not even go to the office. He would have went to that kid or their parent and done something. He would have got something done. But so I just never came clean about anything. I would talk to the counselors and they would be like, you have to toughen up. You gotta toughen up. Like that was, I forgot her name, Miss R or something, and she would like, you gotta toughen up. And I remember I reported her because I just thought, if you're a counselor, you should have something called empathy, and I think you're lacking it. So, and by the way, I didn't even know I was gay in this point. I didn't know I was one of those people they were laughing at and saying that it was gross and disgusting and immoral. So, when all of that started kicking into gear, and I was just like, whoa. And I just remembered every time I was in that school, I knew that I was different, the oddball. But everyone really thought I was disgusting. I even had, because they were really Christian, a lot of heavy religious people at this school, as there would be in the south of Florida. And my parents have always, though they come from hardcore Catholic families, they were not. And they always were happy that I would question, and I would, not interrogate, but I would like get in the deacons or the religious teachers like grill and be like, no, you're contradicting this. This is wrong, blah, blah. Or I would try to, reason with people who like were Bible thumpers, as I called them. And there were kids in this school that would like pray at the flagpole. I blew my mind. And that was one of the worst moments. And I was bullied my whole life. And I probably have semi-worse stories than that. But I wasn't lucky with teachers in South Florida. This teacher in particular, Miss Fitzgerald, if you ever watch this, I want you to know that you're not a good person. Period. You were an awful teacher. And shortly after this, which is interesting, the second teacher, something must have happened, because we had to go to, instead of this big room, because nothing happened to the room afterwards, they had sent us to separate portables, a field apart from each other. So we would go half the day to Miss Fitzgerald and half the day to the other teacher. And I noticed that the other teacher was very different to me after that. And I just had a feeling, I think it's because of what Miss Fitzgerald did to me. And thank you, Miss R. Not the counselor, Miss R. Miss R, the other teacher, in case you're ever watched this. Yeah, so that was my horrible story in middle school. A lot of bad things happened to me at that middle school. I'm sure this is not the last story. But having almost 25 to 30 kids calling me a faggot, laughing at me, and having to walk out in the middle of the day was pretty devastating to me. There's not a lot of love in this world for gay people. I live in Quebec now, and I don't notice any homophobia at all. But I think a lot of gay people my age have been through just as much as I have. So if you're watching this, my fellows, sorry we had to go through this. I wish people were kinder. Anyway, thank you for watching this story time. I really thank you for watching. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. If you know anyone who's dealt with this type of thing, share it. Maybe my words can help someone. But as I usually do with my videos here, we are all stronger together. It's true. Blessed be.